Xamarin.Forms, Xamarin iOS, and Xamarin Android, and it's all in one package. So they're not sold separately. If you do want to use our controls, they're all included. It does feature complete MVVM support, so you can create scalable and testable applications. We continuously update all of our products with 4 major releases every year, and that's in addition to monthly service packs. So we provide seamless integration of Visual Studio, and that includes NuGet support and IntelliSense comments. All right, so at this point, I'm actually going to stop here and switch over into the demo. And like I said, I'm going to be using an Android device to show these controls. And it's going to be a Samsung Galaxy device here, so I'm actually going to use Side Sync to show my screen. Okay. So this is the Xamarin.Forms sample browser running on Android. Because this is Xamarin.Forms, these will look the same on iOS and also on UWP. So I'm going to start with the charts. We have well over 20 charts that we support on Xamarin. I'm going to tab through these, and hopefully you can see the animation. So all of these feature some very nice, rich animation. You can control that. You can also see we're using different color palettes for each of these different charts. And you can also see that we have support for essentially all the different chart types you would expect to find. So column, bar, pie, semi-pie, donut, area, step area, and so on. We also have a couple of scientific charts like the spider chart, which in our collection we call the polar and the radar chart. So let me skip over to those. So here you can see the polar chart and the radar. And then we have a couple of variations like the stacked column, the 100% stacked, and so on. So now let's look at the features. So we have support for a couple of different ways of interacting with these charts. First up is trackball support. So just press and hold on the screen, and then you can slide your finger across to see all the different data points on your chart. On this particular example, we have the data points hidden, so you cannot see them until you tap and hold. But you can change that, so you can display your data points as well. We support axes crossing, and so you can see that here on this chart. We support annotation, so you can see we have support for shapes and text over the charts. We support live update, so you can set your own custom refresh rates. And then we have support for multiple axes, so we have category axes, numerical, logarithmic, and date time axes. We also support strip lines, and these can be set both horizontally and vertically. We also support multiple axes or combination charts. So here you can see a column chart and a line chart. We also support data point selection. So here you can see I can tap on the different bars to select them, and I can tap again to deselect. There are multiple selection modes that you can choose from, and this is just one of them. We also support zooming and panning wherever it makes sense. So here I can use 2 fingers to pinch and zoom, and then 1 finger to pan in any direction. We also have support for vertical charts, so you can see that here. And you can also see the scale on the y-axis changing as more data shows up. Here's an example showing those data markers or those data points visible, and this is also showing our tooltip support. So you can just tap on a data marker, and you can see a tooltip come up. So those tooltips are based off of templates, so you can easily customize those. And then here's another example of data markers where we have some text outside of these bars. You can also see conditional formatting is applied there. We also support auto scrolling. So in addition to auto refresh, we also have this auto scroll mode, which allows you to manually stop the scroll and then pan backwards and forwards in the data. And then when you let go, it can automatically start to refresh again. And then lastly here on the charts, we also have support for technical indicators if you're dealing with financial data. So you can see the different types that we have, and these are all the same as what we have on our web and desktop controls as well. Almost every single control that you're going to see here on Xamarin, we also offer on our desktop and our web platforms as well. Okay, so next we're going to look at the data grid. So this first example, the getting started example, is more of a performance example. It just shows you the smooth scrolling of the grid with a decent amount of data inside of it. From there, we can start to look at the features. So first is sorting. So we support standard ascending and descending sorting. We also support tri-state sorting, where you can tap a third time and remove the sort altogether. We also support custom sorting. So in this example, we're sorting by the length of the first name in the first name column. We also have filtering support, and this works as you type. So as I type, for example, Irene, you can see that the grid is filtered. You can also do it with numbers. So I can type in 1, 3, 4, 5, 1, 3, 4, 5. And you can see it will filter based on that. If we set it to filter on a specific column, then we can also set a condition on that filtering. We support both frozen rows and Okay, can you guys hear me now? Okay, perfect. Yeah, I lost connection there. Okay, so what we're looking at is cell template support right now on the grid. So you can see here, you can heavily customize the look and feel of each of the items or each of the rows shown on the grid. In this case, it actually looks very similar to a list view. Next, we have grouping support. So in the grid, you can see here we have different groups, a couple different layers. So we have different levels of grouping here available. You can also see the checkbox controls animating on the right here. We also support custom grouping. In this example, we're actually showing it based off of in this data, we have the sales data for the 4 quarters of the year, and the grouping is based on the amount of 2 of those quarters. Like the charts, we also have multiple selection modes available here on the grid. So here you can see multi-select with deselect. And then here in this example, we can swap between the different types. So if we choose single, then we always have one item selected. And then of course we can go to single with deselect. And then we can uncheck whatever we've selected. We also support editing, inline editing on the mobile grid. So I can double tap on a cell. This is a numerical cell, so it brings up the numerical keypad on my device. We also have support for drop-down lists, so you can see that here. This is the Android style. So I can choose a name, click OK. We also support date pickers. So here you can see date selection on the grid. And then the last option here is just a standard text input field. So I can see regular text and numbers. We also allow the user to customize or change their view. So you can resize columns. You can also reorder columns. So you can grab and then drag and drop a column and move it to a different location. You can do the same thing with rows. We have support for unbound columns. In this example, it is the total column at the end. We're calculating that based on the unit price, the quantity, and the discount. We also have support for conditional styling. So here you can see an example of that, different cell background colors as well as cell font colors. And we also have support for multiple styles. So here we have an example showing a theme selector. So here you can see we can go from a dark theme to a blue one, and so on. We also have support for auto row height, so uneven rows are easily displayed inside of the grid. We also support diagonal scrolling, so if you want to scroll from one corner to the other, you can easily do that, in addition to vertical and horizontal scrolling. We support a couple of different load more methods. So the one we're showing here is the manual method, where when you reach the bottom of the grid, you tap on the load more button, and it loads more data into the grid. We do also support incremental loading, where it will automatically load more data into the grid as you reach the bottom. We have support for pull to refresh. So there you can see the fairly universal pull to refresh animation. We have support for paging, and this is a scrollable page bar. We also support swipe actions. So you can see here, swiping from the left or from the right will reveal an action. And with this example, we can also see that we support dialogue editing as well. So earlier we saw inline editing, here we have dialogue editing. The grid also supports real-time refresh. So you can see here, we call it rendering dynamic data. So we're automatically refreshing the grid, as well as using conditional formatting to display different data. And lastly, here on mobile, we can export to various formats. So we can export to Excel. So if I tap on that, it will bring up Excel on my phone. And there you can see the contents of that grid. Or we can export to PDF in this example. And here I have not chosen a default application, so it's asking me what I want to use. And the reason for that is because we do also have a PDF viewer on Xamarin. So if you are allowing users to export or otherwise work with PDF files, you can keep them inside of your application at all times. So here we have support for all the things you would expect. So here you can do things like search for text. It will highlight it. You can tab through the different results. You can pinch to zoom. You can also skip to a specific page. And you can even annotate text. So at the bottom here, we have an annotation button that allows you to do things like highlight, underline, and strike through text. And because your users are able to do that, you can also allow them to save the document to their device, or even load a different document if you have allowed them to load documents into the viewer. All right, next we're going to look at the list view. So here again, the getting started example is more about performance. It just shows you the smooth scrolling. It does support a grid layout, so you can recreate something like this where we have an image gallery, for example. It does have a selection mode, so you can tap to enable selection. So you can see that here on the grid layout. And then we also support grouping on the list view. So here you can see a standard contact list grouped by first name. Just like before, we have a selection mode available on the regular list view as well. So you can activate that two ways. You can tap on the pencil icon, and that will give you selection mode. Or you can press and hold on an item, and that will also bring you into selection mode. Our list views can also be set horizontally. So you can have a horizontally scrolling list view, and because of that, you can fit more than one on the page. So you can have multiple list views, and you can even activate them simultaneously using two fingers. So we also have swipe actions here on the list view, just like we did on the grid. So a left swipe will give you one action, and a right swipe will give you another. We now support item reordering on the list view, so users can grab an item and reorder them in the list view wherever they want. And you can combine that with checkbox selection as well. The pull to refresh we saw earlier is also here on the list view. So you can see here we're using a different animation this time. So you can actually choose between different animations. So you have the slide on top, and then you also have the push that we just saw. Here we also support loading more data into the list view using the two methods I mentioned earlier on the grid. This time we're showing the incremental method. So as I scroll to the bottom, it will automatically load more data into the list view. We've slowed it down so you can see it. So this is a slow refresh just so you can see the action happening. Just like with the grid, we also support displaying uneven rows, and so you can see that here with the auto fit items property enabled. We also have a data template selector, so here you can see the list view has been turned into a conversation view, like in a text messaging application. And we support sorting and filtering in the list view as well, just like we do on the grid. And it works the same way. So you can search any of the fields of any of the items. So here I can search the title of this item, or I can search in the content box, the main content of any item as well. Sorting is toggled using the A to Z button in the top right corner. So ascending and descending sort. And this one has tri-state sorting enabled, so I can tap a third time to disable that sort. Next, we're going to look at our autocomplete component. So this works, again, as pretty much as you'd expect. So you're able to type in some text, and you'll get a list of suggestions based on your text. And so this component is populated just with a simple collection, so a list or an observable collection or something like that. You have the ability to change suggestion modes. So here you can set whether you suggest an append. And if you do that, as your user types, it will automatically fill out their text with the nearest suggestion. We also have a numeric text box. This allows you to very easily apply formatting for cultures and things like that onto your numerical data. So here we have an example that does that, so we can very easily go between different cultures, and you can see the numbers will be formatted differently accordingly. Next up, we have our calendar component. So this is half of the scheduler. This is the read-only part of the scheduler component. So here you have your standard month view. You can change these, so you can go between different views. You can see here we have different selections available, and you can set your minimum and your maximum date that people can scroll through in the calendar. It does allow you to show events in line, so you can tap on a day and see all the events that are available on that day. It also allows you to customize it with blackout dates, so there are days that you can set as not being usable. And you can also set different language support in here. So it does support localization, and you can see here we have support for multiple languages, and we have a couple of examples here, including Spanish. Next up is the navigation drawer. So this is a great replacement for the Xamarin.Forms master detail page. It works exactly the same. You have the hamburger button with the slide out menu when you tap it. You can also manually slide the menu out with your finger. And the reason why this is a nice improvement is because you can have multiple navigation drawers on a single page. So this is the navigation menu for the example, but this entire sample application is also inside of a navigation drawer. So I have two navigation drawers that I can pull out, and I can easily choose which one I want. So if that's a little too complicated, you can also very easily set the navigation drawer to pop out from any of the four sides of the screen. In this example, we only allowed the left and right, but top and bottom are also supported. So using this, you can have multiple menus very easily accessible from either side of the screen. And just like with the pull to refresh example, we do have multiple animations that you can use. So this is the slide on top, and this is the push. The next control that we have an example for here just got an updated example, which looks very nice. I'm going to start with the older example first so you can see, get a better idea of what you can customize. So we have three gauges: circular gauge, linear gauge, and digital gauge. The digital gauge is the most simplistic. You just have this digital readout that you can use to display both numbers and text. Here you can see we're using it to display the current time. We also have a linear gauge that allows you to very heavily customize the look and feel of how you display this data. You can customize the scales, the pointers, the legend, and also the orientation of the gauge. You can't see that really here because this is an old example and is really just a screenshot. However, the circular gauge has been updated, and it does show, it has the same features as the linear gauge, but here you can see a better example of how you can use this. So here you can see we can easily set the pointer to any value. You can see it change in real time. The gauge can be heavily customized to mimic whatever look and feel you're trying to go for. So you can choose to use a needle or not. You can choose to use a full circle or not. And you can even use different annotations as well. You can use multiple pointers. So you can see here we have a compass. And so that allows us to have multiple pointers pointing in either direction. We can also change the shape of those pointers. So they can be arrows, they can be triangles, they can be circles, they can be just about anything. And you also have support for multiple scales. So here we essentially have two gauges being shown in one view. And so those multiple scales allow us to do things like this, where we really heavily customize how that data is displayed. And lastly, annotation support allows you to add text to any of the gauges. So here you can see a clock, a real-time clock with annotation support for the digital readout of the time and the month, or the minutes and the seconds. The next control is our range navigator. This is a filter for charts. So this allows you to easily set your start and your end point. And then you can drag that range around, and you can see that it easily filters chart data. This allows you to also very quickly snap to specific units of time. So I have the months listed at the bottom. I can tap on a month and immediately snap to that particular date range. Along the top of the range navigator, I also have the quarters of the year, and I can tap on those and easily snap to any of them as well. Next is the schedule control, and this is the rest of the calendar. So just like what we saw before, this is primarily a calendar view, but it also allows you to switch to a day, to a week, a work week, or a month view. Here you can see the day view. Here we can swap between the different types. And we can also very easily customize the views here. We can scroll very quickly. We can swipe between days. You can see here how easy it is to swipe between days. You can very easily configure how the days work or how they look. So just like we could do with the calendar, we can set blackout dates and blackout times if we're looking at just a specific day. We also have, of course, the appointment editor. So you can either edit an existing event, and you can, of course, customize the fields that are available here. You have this date picker available, just like you would expect when you're choosing your date. And then we also have a radial menu for selecting time. So you set your hour, and then your minutes, and then you can set your meridian by just tapping on AM or PM. You can also, of course, set recurring events. And if you set a recurring event, they can be displayed differently on the calendar. So if it's a recurring event, you'll see a dot towards the bottom of that day. And here you can see that they still display inline, and you can see the title of the event where it occurs every 2 days or whatever that is. Views can easily be customized, so the actual events themselves can have templates applied to them. So here you can see this event is a birthday, so it has a different color and it has an icon that goes with it. This next one is a doctor's appointment, so a different color and a different icon. A new feature for this last release is this agenda view, which gives you the split view between the calendar and the events for that page. So the events will always be visible at the bottom, and the calendar just takes up the top 70% of the page. And again, localization support is here as well. Our next control is the Kanban control. Up to this point, everything you've seen is also available on web and desktop from Syncfusion. And this control is also one of them. And this works exactly as it does on the web and desktop here on Xamarin. So you have a drag and drop interface where you can drag your different items around to different statuses. And you can set workflow restrictions. So if I grab this to-do item and try to send it to the very last status, you can see that it won't let me because we set a restriction there. It does support swim lane, so you can set set an item in a different swim lane when you drag and drop it. So you can see that here in this customized version where we're using it as a food ordering system. So if I grab a menu item, I can move it here, and then you can see the swim lanes that I can choose. And from there, I can continue the order. We have a new set of picker controls available as well. So this is one of our new pickers. You can see here your selections are able to very easily modify various properties of the picker itself. It's also very useful as a new dialog picker. So here you can see it as a date picker. So now you have these rolling selection bars that allow you to more easily choose a date without having to see a full calendar and tap smaller touch points. Also works very well for selecting time. So you can choose your hour, your minute, and your meridian very simply. And it also allows for cascading menus. So here we can choose a country, and then you can see we can choose cities within that country. So cascading menus are also possible with this control. Next up is our image editor. So this is one of our newer controls for Xamarin. Although you don't see it here, it does allow you to access the device's gallery as well as its camera in order to get a picture to edit. So I'm going to click on one of these sample pictures. And here you can see we can add text boxes. And we can resize and reposition those. And then I can add another one, change the color, place it somewhere else, and keep going. We can also freehand draw over an image. We can add shapes, as many of those as you need. And we can do some basic transformations. So we can crop, we can rotate, and we can flip. The next control is actually one we've already seen twice. This is the pull to refresh control again. So this is actually available as a separate control in addition to being built into the grid and to the list view. So you've already seen essentially all the features of it. You have your different transition types, your different animations. The only thing I haven't shown you is that you can, your user can cancel and change their mind on that pull to refresh. So as long as they keep their finger on the screen, the pull to refresh will not happen, and they can slide back up to cancel it. So it works the same. It works, the way you would expect if you pull and let go, but then you can also stop and cancel. Next is our radio menu. So this is a really interesting control that allows for custom context menus. So it's a floating icon, so you can move it wherever you like, and you can also tap on it, and that will reveal the menu. So here we have an example of nested menus. We have some system controls. I'm going to tap on the brightness on the right, and then that gives me some additional options. So I have a low, medium, and high presets, so I can tap on those. But I can also set my own values by simply grabbing and rotating the control around. This can be heavily customized, so the segments can contain any kind of content. They can contain icons, they can contain text, or they can be solid colors as you see here. So if I choose a color, then I can choose a different hue, and then you can see it makes a change at the top. The actual radio menu can be customized in many ways. So not only can the segments of the menu be customized, but also the whether it's a full circle or not. So you can do just a segment of the menu. So like we have here, it's in the corner, and you can see it's just a quadrant of that circle and not the full thing. And you can also see that the actual menu items are not connected to the center hub. Next up is another example of one of our charts. This is one of our newer charts, and so this example is also not very fleshed out. So this control supports drill down. It supports selecting the different segments, so users can tap on each of the segments on the chart and make selections. Next up is our map control. This is, again, another one available on all of our platforms. And so far, the only one that's not available on every platform is the image editor. Right now, that's the only one that's unique to Xamarin, but it is coming later to everything else. So here we have support for pinch to zoom. You can also see here bubble visualization. We support color mapping, so different shapes can be essentially support conditional styling. So you can tap on these shapes and select them. It supports data markers, so these are set using coordinates. And because this is a GeoJSON shapefile viewer, you can choose to view any type of file inside of, or any type of shape inside of this map control. So you can also use it like this as a ticket selector inside of a bus, for example. So you can choose your seats inside of a bus or any other type of environment. So it could be a movie theater, it can be an airplane, whatever you want it to be. In addition to that GeoJSON map control, we also have a tree map. And this supports multiple styles, different layouts. So you can see here the different layouts for the tree map. It also supports both flat and hierarchical collections. Here you can see an example of hierarchical. And it supports customization in the form of allowing icons to be added to each segment. We also have a barcode component on Xamarin, and this allows you to generate both barcodes and QR codes. Right now, it only generates those codes. It does not decode them. And there's actually more than just these 3 examples. There are, I think, 12 different formats that we support. We also have support for spark lines on mobile. So these can be easily integrated with the grid control. So you can have some visual, some additional visual components inside of your grids. We have a couple different types of sliders. So in addition to the range navigator, we have your standard range slider. So you have these multi-point sliders. You can easily customize how they behave. For example, allowing it to snap to the tick marks means that it only allows you to select those values that are visible on the legend or on those ticks. You can also choose to show the labels or not, and various other properties can be set as well. In addition, it does not have to be a range slider. It can be a single point slider, and it can be set vertically. This busy indicator control is really just a collection of activity indicators that you can use in your app. So they're not really specific to anything, so you can use them wherever you want. Although there are a couple of activity-specific indicators like this one, the print, and there's also one for battery, which shows charging. Next up is our last slider. This is the rating slider, and this is based on images. So you slide your finger on these star images, you can see that it sets a value. You can change the precision here so that you can fill, only partially fill the shapes. As you can see there, we can choose to fill based on a percentage. And because of this, you can customize this so that it behaves a little bit differently. So here we have these smiley faces. You can also slide your finger across these, but you'll notice that as I go from angry to excited, the color of each selected shape changes from red to green. Next up is the carousel control. So this is used for displaying images in this cover flow format. You can also set it to display them linearly. And you can see here you have several different properties you can set for choosing how these images are actually displayed. Next is another image control. This is a rotator. So here we have it in this example inside of a fake product page. So right now it's set to display as a slideshow, so it will automatically scroll through the images. You can see there's a thumbnail strip on the right side here at the top. And you can have control over that as well as the direction in which the images update. So we can put the strip wherever we'd like. So I'm going to choose the bottom there. We can also choose whether to show thumbnails or dots. And we can also have the images scroll up and down instead of left and right. And here you have a toggle for enabling that slideshow. Enable autoplay on or off. Next up is the numeric up-down button. So this gives you an easy way to set or create increment and decrement buttons. You can easily set your minimum and max values. So you can see here as I reach 0, the decrement button is grayed out, and then I am unable to add to cart. This data source control is a background control. So once you've got your collection of data that you'll be using in your list view or in your grid, you would send that into the data source control, and this control will handle things like sorting, filtering, and grouping of your data. And then here we have our calculate control. So this is actually an example. This is a calculator example, but the actual control we're showing is this functions library. On web and desktop, we have a spreadsheet control that allows you to view and edit Excel files. And it does include about 70 to 80% of the formulas you would find in Excel. And so that list of formulas is what you're looking at here. So this is generally the majority of the formulas you would find in Excel. And they're also available here on Xamarin, so you can use them anywhere in your app. So here we have this calculator, so you can see all the functions working. The next four controls, XLSIO, DocIO, Presentation, and PDF, are part of our file format library. These allow you to generate Excel files, Word documents, PowerPoint files, and PDF files. Inside of each one is an example of the types of objects that you can place into each file. So for example, with Excel, you can create more spreadsheets, you can add worksheets to those spreadsheets, you can place charts, you can use formulas, you can apply filters and so on with these Excel files. With a Word document, you can use bookmarks, you can apply custom styles, you can use built-in styles, and you can also add charts since it does integrate with other Microsoft Office products. You can also do mail merge as well as form filling, XML mapping, and you can even do conversions with all of these controls. So here we have an example of converting from Word to HTML. Presentation, very similar. You have the ability to add slides and then add objects to those slides like charts, text, and images. And then PDF, same thing. So you have the ability to add various different object types into a PDF, and then you have here several examples for that. Then the very last component is a preview of our diagram control. So this again is one that we already have on web and desktop. And here we're essentially showing you a preview of it coming to mobile. So you have the ability to hide some of these branches. This is using an automatic layout that again is already supported on web and desktop. You'll have the ability to create things like flow diagrams, and these will eventually be able to be created by using drag and drop. So there will be an editor in this diagram builder. And nodes can be heavily customized, so they can support any kind of content. So here you can see different shapes being used, but you can also apply buttons, you can apply date pickers, drop-down menus, and everything else inside of any of these shapes. Okay, so those are the Syncfusion Xamarin components. Any questions? And you can use the chat box in GoToMeeting if you'd like, or you can unmute yourself and speak. So right now we, is your question, do we support Xamarin.Forms for Mac or Xamarin.Forms for WPF? Is that the question? So if you're asking if we have support for Mac, we do. We do have a selection of, or all of those controls are available as both NuGet packages for Mac, as well. You can also just download them as a package on directly to a Mac, so you can use it on Visual Studio for Mac there. And we are already looking into supporting Mac OS components with Xamarin.Forms 3.0. So whenever that comes out, all of our Xamarin.Forms components should also be available for Mac OS. So all the controls you saw here on Xamarin, there is already a version of them for WPF. So Syncfusion does offer quite a lot. So let me come out of here. Minimize this. So if you look at this list, these are all the different libraries and different platforms we support. So you can see here we have WPF, UWP, Windows Form support, all the different web platforms we support, and essentially everything you just saw is available there on these different web platforms. So if I look at MVC, for example, you can see most of the same controls, the grids, diagram, map, everything is here, just like we saw in Xamarin. Okay, Leo. So do you so you can get in through a VPN or you cannot? And you're welcome, Francisco. Yeah, as far as I know, we don't. I don't think we're not blocking access. So if you're able to get in through a VPN, I'm not sure why that would be, though. Okay, any other questions? The gauge on mobile does not support swiping, I don't think. Let's take a look. Let's take a look real quick. I don't think we do. On the web, it does allow for user interaction. So a user can grab the needle pointer, for example, and set it to their own values. Let's see. Yeah, I don't think it does support user interaction right now. That's certainly something we can add. For any of our components, we can easily add new features like that, especially if we already have it somewhere else. So like I said, we do have it here on web and desktop. So if you look at the circular gauge here, we have an example called user interaction right here. And then you can allow the user to grab and set the needle. All right, does that answer your question, Jose? All right, any other questions? If not, then we can move on to the code session, which, like I said, will probably be a little bit short just because my app stopped working and I didn't have time to fix it. Oh, yes. These are supported in .NET Standard. So Syncfusion is primarily a .NET company, so everything we do here is supported in .NET Standard. Now I will actually show you a new app using the .NET Standard as well. So before I get into that, yes, that's correct, Jose. So right now only animations with the mobile component. Okay, so before I get into the code, let's talk about how you can actually get access to these controls. There's two ways. The first way is by just going to the Syncfusion website. Syncfusion, not Syncfusion. So you go to the Syncfusion website, and you can see here right on the home page, there's a free trial of all of our components. So you can go to our product page, pick a specific library, and then you can get a free trial of just that, or you can get a free trial of all of our components. There's over 800 of them. But once you have access, you would download. You can log into your account, and then go to the download section. This is also where you would go to create any support tickets if you had any issues. But for example, Essential Studio, download and links. you can see you have access to all the versions of everything we've ever created going back to 2001. You can download either the Enterprise Edition, which gives you everything, like I said, and this is available as a free trial. So this gives you all 800 controls, including samples. So the application that I just showed you, the running on my phone, is available as a sample application with the source code. So you can see exactly how it was run. If you download the Essential Studio, this is what you get. And you can see here for each of the libraries, you have examples that you can go through. That includes desktop and, of course, Xamarin. So here with the Xamarin controls, if you click Explore, it brings you to where the samples are installed. And then you can choose between the 3 platforms, Android, Forms, or iOS. So if you go to Forms, you can see the individual control examples. So you can click on any one of them. And then you can see here you get a solution file. So you can open up the source code that way. Or we also have a couple of apps. So there's a patient monitor app. There is an expense. No, there isn't. There is another application that's not here. It's called the Expense Analysis Tool. That one's available on GitHub. And then the sample browser, this is what I just showed you. So if you open this up in Visual Studio, you can deploy it to UWP, for example, so you can see that version working as well. And then the other application we have is the server monitor for Forms. Oh, and also Invoice. So we have a couple different applications so you can see different examples of how to use these components. So downloading the controls is one way to get access. So if you do it this way, then you can reference your controls from your local machine. The other way, and the way that most people will probably do it, is using NuGet packages. So coming back to here, so where I am is help.syncfusion.com. From there, you can go to your Xamarin platform of choice. So let's say Xamarin.Forms. And then from there, you can go to the download and installation section, choose your platform, Mac or Windows. And here you can see we give you instructions for setting up how to acquire these through NuGet. So we do have our own NuGet feed URL, which is right here. And then that gives you access to all of our components. When you download these components, you do have to accept the license terms. They are available as a free trial, so you're not actually agreeing to pay for anything. But just be aware that there is you do have to agree to the terms whenever you download them from our NuGet packages. So let's go ahead and take a look at a new project. So I'm going to create a new cross-platform application. I'm just going to call this cars. I'm going to choose .NET Standard as my code sharing technology. I'm going to choose a blank amp since I don't want to use master detail, and I'm going to stick with Xamarin.Forms. I'm only going to show you Android, but I'll leave the 3 platforms selected just so you can see that everything works. And I'll go ahead and create this new application. Okay, so here we have our new solution. So I'm just going to go ahead and close out some of these other projects or hide them. And I'll go ahead and start setting up my MVVM platform framework. So I'm just going to go ahead and start adding some folders. So I'll start with view. And then I'll go into models and view models. Oh, wrong button. Model. And view model. So this is an app that I was working on for the past couple of days. And like I said, I'm not a developer, so it took me a long time to get to where I got. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the carousel component, and I'm going to use it to display a couple of car logos to essentially create a car buying or car selection app. Like I said, it doesn't completely work, so it won't get all the way through, but you'll see, you can get the idea from here. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and move my main page into my view folder. And I'll go ahead and change my namespace. There, I'll change it in the code behind. I'll also change it in my app.cs. Oops. And then Visual Studio froze, so now I've got to wait. And if you guys have any other questions, just keep asking them in the chat, and I'll try to keep an eye on those. I think I might have to kill Visual Studio. Okay. This happens a lot when working with Visual Studio. I'm sure you're all aware. Okay, so let's go back. Okay. So I didn't save much. All right, so like I said, I'm going to be using the carousel control, and I'm going to use it as a selection control. So in our examples, it is not a selection control. It's not meant to be used that way. It's just meant to display images. But it's easy enough to repurpose it and make it and allow you to display or allow users to make selections using it. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and start by managing my NuGet packages. So if you follow the instructions on our web page here, all you need to do is go to Manage NuGet Packages, come here to the settings, and just add a new package source. So you can see I've already added it. I've had the Syncfusion Xamarin NuGet source there, and I also have our MVC one. And so from here, I can just choose Syncfusion Xamarin. I can browse, and I'm going to look for the carousel. I'm going to use the top one. This is the one for Xamarin.Forms. And you'll notice that most of these will ask you that you install them in all of the projects, the PCL, Android, iOS, and UWP. So I'll go ahead and do that. Sorry, I clicked on the wrong thing. Got to click on the solution, Manage NuGet Packages there. Look for the carousel. And again, you have to choose all of your projects, and then you can install. So this is the licensing that I was mentioning. It's coming up in the next, right here, so you can see the license. So I'll go ahead and accept. Okay, so now I'm actually going to go to our documentation, find the carousel, getting started. Here we actually give you a couple of code snippets you can just copy and paste into your project. For example, the XML namespace. I'm just going to grab that from here and paste it into my project. I'm going to add a stack layout here. I'll move the label into it. And then I'll add the Syncfusion carousel. I'll give it a name of just carousel. All right, so that's good enough for now. So next, I'm going to go ahead and recreate my folders. So I'm going to create a model. Okay. Looks like it's already there, so I need to add an existing item. Visual Studio. Okay, so model, and view model. And in my model, I'm going to create a new class. I'm going to call it car brand. And this is going to be pretty simple. It's going to be a string called brand name. And one more called brand logo. And I'll go ahead and create a constructor for this. Public car model. And public car brand. Car brand. And this time it will take string name, string image. And so I know that ahead of time I'm going to be manually adding these car brands into my collection. I'm not going to be going out to any web service, just to keep it simple. So here, brand name is name, and brand logo is image. Okay, and so now I'm going to create my view model. And I'll just call this main page view model. I'm going to go ahead and create an observable observable collection of type car brand. I'll call it car brand list. Put a getter and a setter. And then constructor, public, main page view model. Okay, so here, I'm going to add my using statements. Okay, so far I've just created a view model that has a place for me to store my car brands. And so in the constructor of the view model, I'm going to actually create those or populate that list with those car brands. So I will start by creating a new car brand list, new observable collection, car brand. And then for the sake of time, I'm just going to copy and paste this next line. Now these images, like I said, I'm primarily going to be working with Android, so I'm only going to worry about putting it in this project. So in order to get these images to display on Android, I'm going to go to the Resources and Drawable folder, and then I will add some existing items from a previous project. Put this in the wrong place. Visual Studio and Car App, Android, Resources, Drawable. And then here you can see I have some PNGs, so these do have transparent backgrounds. I'll add those as my drawables. Okay. And so now these should display once I load this. So the next thing I need to do is bind this to my carousel. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to set my, well, I'm going to add my XML namespace view models is equal to, and then I will just type in CLR namespace space cars dot view model. Okay, and then I can set my content page binding context, and that will be view models main page view model. Okay, so pretty simple so far. And now I can bind that to the item source of the carousel. Binding, and that was, what was that? Car brand list. So car brand list. And I'll go ahead and set some settings here. So this is going to have an item width of 110, item spacing 40, vertical options, I'll just set it to start, and a height request of 280 for the carousel, well, 290. Okay. Now the next thing I need to do, so this is not enough for me to see the carousel. At least I don't think it is. So let's build it and see what happens. All right, so while that's building, and does anyone have any questions? Okay, so I don't see any questions. So while that's building, pretty sure it's not going to work because we do need to specify an item template in the carousel. And so again, we can come back here to the documentation to get that. So after it gives us the The basics to just get the carousel in are XAML. So we have the Syncfusion, or we have the call to put the carousel on the page. We also have our XML namespace for the Syncfusion carousel itself. Then we also get an example of how to create a collection, add some items to it, basically the same way I just did. And then we get this example of an item template. So we have here, we're using a resource dictionary to specify an item template. And so I'm going to go ahead and copy this and have it ready to add into my app. So this is still building. Okay. This is always the fun part, to see if what you just wrote works. This actually is a lot faster without the gotomeeting running. Okay, so we can see here that there is no carousel. Again, as I expected, there's no item template. So let's quickly fix that. And I'm going to go ahead and put that right here, paste. And then I'm going to change my binding of my image source to brand logo. And I'm going to leave that as the same. And let's go ahead and deploy that one more time. Oh, of course, I forgot to set the item template. So in the actual carousel, you have to set your item template. Static resource. And it's just called item template. Okay, and then I will change this to say, choose a car brand below. Well, that should have worked. Brand logo. What did I do wrong? Content resources. Okay. Probably make this public, and then that might work. And let's see. Okay, yeah, so you can tell I'm not a developer. I don't do this every day. Maybe this time it will work. Okay, awesome. So we now have a carousel, so I can select these logos. And so, like I said, by default, this doesn't really do anything other than just display images. But I actually want to use this as an input control. And so using Xamarin and MVVM is actually really easy to do. So the next thing I'm going to do is add a button to my main page. So I'll add it underneath the carousel. So button, actually, I'll just make it self-closing. It's going to say next. And it's going to have a command and a command parameter. So this is where my app actually does not work, but I'll just show you what the main idea here. So now in my main page view model, I'm going to create a new method called getCarList. And I'll leave that blank for now. I'll also create a command. And this is the important part. It is a command that accepts, that has a type, so it accepts an input, some sort of parameter. And I'll just call this getCarList command. Fix that with Xamarin.Forms. Okay. And so here in the constructor, we'll go ahead and set the command. So getCarList command is a new command, type int, and it takes in getCarList. And it's giving me that error because this needs to accept an int as well. So I'll call this selected index. And this will eventually be an async void. Okay. So what I'm setting up right now is this getCarList function will grab the parameter sent from that button, which is going to be the selected index of the image in the carousel. And I'm going to use that to build the next page, which will have a list, just a list view, showing me all different cars for the selected brand. And so the next thing I need to do is go ahead and create a new model. And this will be called car models. And just like before, I'm actually going to inherit from car brand. And then, oops. Here what I need is, well, in the interest of time, I'll just go ahead and copy and paste. So I need a model name, model type, and then I'll just create a constructor that allows me to set the brand name, and model type. Actually, I will change this. There we go. Okay. And so now I can go back to my main page view model, and I need to create a well, first I need to go back to my XAML here, set my command to be finding to get car list command, get car list command. This command parameter is going to essentially point to a property on the carousel. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to set my binding source to be, yeah, that's right, X reference to be the carousel. And then the path from that is going to be the property called selected index. Selected index. And so you can see here there is a property called selected index. It takes in a number, so you can use this to set the default item in the carousel. But I actually just want to get a value from it, so I'll pass it in as a command parameter. And so with that, in my my view model, I'm going to be getting that selected index as an integer. And in here, I'm going to pass it as a, I'm going to pass it into my observable collection. So what I'm going to do is create a new variable, which is of type car brand. And I'll just call it car brand. And that is equal to, or I'll set that to be car brand list selected index, just like that. And then what I'm going to do next is essentially prepare to bring up the next page. So let me go ahead and create that. So I'm going to add a new page. Did I already do it? No. Add a new page, new item. It's going to be a content page. It's going to be called car list. Okay. And then I'll come back to main page view model, because I also need to create a new view model called car list view model. Car list view model. Okay. And back here. So the next thing I need to do is create a new instance of that page. So I'll create car, I'll call it car list page, is a new instance of a navigation page. Which is a new instance of car list page. And it doesn't recognize it, so I'll just do this. Is that what I called it? Car, oh, just car list. Okay. So create the new car list. And then next thing I'm going to do is for that car list page, I'm going to set the binding context. And that binding context is going to be a new instance of the car list view model. And it will take, or rather it's going to pass over the car brand. So my car list view model will need a constructor that accepts that. Oops. And it's going to be of type car brand. And it's going to be car brand. Okay. And so then the last thing I need to do here is await the current main page navigation and push async. and that will be cart list page. Okay, and so in the cart list view model, I'm going to essentially create a new list. So first thing I need to do is the same thing I did before. So I'll create a public observable, nope, I'll just copy and paste that. Okay, and then just like before, I'm going to populate it with a bunch of data manually. So again, I will copy and paste that. And so all I need to do here is set car model list to a new instance of itself, essentially. Our collection and object model. Boom. Okay. So this is basically where as far as I got. Go ahead and set this. And so what I'm doing here is I'm creating a variable to store the name of the car brand that I'm going to be using. And so then I'm going to set that to be equal to whatever I'm bringing in. So this car brand object has a property called a brand name, and I will store that as the string car brand. What I would want to do next is use the data source component to filter my list view based on this value. And so the way this works, like I said, going back to the main page view model, this will actually pick up, and let me set, I'm going to set a breakpoint right there. This will pick up the selected index because of the way I set up this command, using it as a command parameter over here. So I think this will work. Let's see. Let's find out. I'm sure I forgot something. Oh yeah, I did forget something. All right, any questions so far while we're waiting for this to build? So we're coming up to the end of this presentation. I just wanted to show, passing this parameter, show that it works, and then that is pretty much it. So again, if you have any questions, let me know. Okay, and I already know this is broken because I forgot to set my main page as a navigation page. So when I click next, it's going to, let's see. No, it's not going to do anything. So yeah. So I need to set this to be a navigation, this to be a navigation page. So new navigation page. That would be a new that. There we go. And then here, I didn't set something. add a getter and a setter to that command. Okay, try that again. Okay, so now we're in my breakpoint, and we can see that the selected index is 0. And if I keep going here, we can see that that leads me to a car brand of Audi. So when I move over to the next page, I'll have that parameter, and I can send that over and then continue the process of building out this list, filtering based on that brand name and only showing the cars that match that name. Because if you look again at my my data here, I have Audis, I have BMWs, and I have Mercedes. So I only want to see these. And so the data source component is what's going to let me do that easily. So if we go here and look at data source, you would use this for filtering, or sorry, for sorting and for grouping. And then you can also use the list views built in filtering in order to get that to work correctly. So list view, getting started, oops, filtering. And then here we can go through this process as well. But in the interest of time, I'm going to leave it there. So that will be it. So hopefully that was enough to give you kind of a taste of, you know, how easy it is to get started with this, minus all my mistakes. It's pretty simple. It's pretty easy to get access to the Syncfusion controls. You have NuGet packages. You can download them directly. If you download them directly, you get those examples. So you get several sample applications. If you don't want to go that route, you can just go to github.com. We are there as well. github.com/Syncfusion. And you can see here we have a Xamarin project here as well. If you don't want to download the studio. So you can go here, get this example project, get the NuGet packages, and still be able to work through it. All right, and then lastly, let me come back to my slideshow for a minute. So one thing that I also wanted to mention is that we do actually have community licenses. So if you guys are independent developers, or if you're in a smaller company, your revenue is less than $1 million, you get everything that we offer for free. It's not a trial, it is simply a free license. For larger companies, essentially everyone else, you can see here that our pricing starts at $39.95. And so with that $39.95, that global license, you get unlimited users, servers, deployments. It gives you access to not just our controls, but also enterprise solutions. We have a dashboard platform, big data platform, report platform, and a data integration platform. And you can see here, there are no royalties. There are no costly surprises because, as we said, unlimited users and unlimited service. No per user fees. So if you are using something like the dashboard platform, we don't charge extra for every person or every license or every person that needs to view the data. So nothing like that. And so that is it for the presentation. Any final questions or anything else that you guys wanted to see that maybe I didn't cover? All right, you're welcome, guys. De nada, Pau. Well, I'm glad you all could join us this evening. So hopefully you guys have a great rest of your evening. Get home safe. And thank you guys for joining the session.